Today, we're going to show you how to create a product label and how to composite into an actual product for mockup purposes. Not only that, but we're going to show you how to update real time your label and have it affect the composite. We've got a great tutorial for you. Let's jump into Photoshop. So here we are in Photoshop. Now I've got a sample image here of our product and we want to create a label and actually place it on there. We want to do this in perspective and have it actually look like it's warping around the product as well. Now this is a super cool episode and you can download these sample images and follow along. We've got a little bit more of a longer, more in-depth video, but you can also get the PSD to kind of see what we've done. All right, so the first thing we want to do is basically create like a shape that correlates to the product itself. So let's go ahead and create a new layer, and I'm gonna hit M for the marquee tool, and we're just gonna like click and drag and make a shape that's right about the size of the label. It doesn't have to be perfect. There we go. Something like that looks pretty good. Now on this new layer, I'm just gonna fill this with white. So I can hit Shift Delete, which is the keyboard shortcut for the fill dialog, and we're just gonna go to white and hit OK. Fantastic. Let's hit Control-Command-D to deselect. So now I have like kind of the shape of my new document, right? But I want to like actually get this into its own PSD so I can update that and have it then update in real time with my mockup. So how do we get this shape onto a new document? Super easy to do. Just right click on the layer itself and go right down to where it says duplicate layer. There we go. Now once it says duplicate layer, just choose right here where it says document. We're just going to click there and go to new. Okay, that's just going to put it on a new document, and here we see we have a new document. Now, when we're creating the label, I want it to be a little bit higher quality than this because we can always scale it down, and this will allow us to put it in other places as well, like in advertisements or in other products. So basically, I just want to take this shape. The shape is going to define the aspect ratio of like the label itself. I just want to take the shape and make it bigger. So we're going to hit Control-Command-T for transform, and then I'm just going to scale up my width and my height. There we go, to right about there, and that's gonna be the actual like shape of our label. So let's go ahead and hit enter. I'm gonna hit C for the crop tool, and we're gonna give us a little bit more space around here. So let's just crop it, there we go. Give us a little bit more space, and then we just want to basically, oh, I don't want content aware crop fill with that crop, just a regular crop is cool. Okay, so this is basically a great label template. Now let's go ahead and save this out, Shift-Command-S, and we're just gonna go ahead and put this as label, there we go, template. Fantastic. Now what we want to do is start bringing in some other images. So I want this to like be, you know, like a skincare brand and things like that. So I found some cool stock images. Some of these are on pexels.com. So this is like what we're going to use as our background. Let's go ahead and click and drag that right in. Fantastic, you can see that. And then I found a couple of these icons on Noun Project. All this is going to be linked on PHLEARN.com, so just follow the link right down below. It's just a really great place to find like really interesting assets like these. Let's hit F for full screen, and I want to just start arranging everything. So let's bring this this shape here on beneath the label. Let's hit Control-Command-T, and we're going to stretch that out a little bit. There we go. So that's looking pretty good. And then these guys here, we just want to kind of bring this is going to be on the top of our label, and that's going to be on the center of the label. So the next thing I want to do is create like a shape that has some of this color from the background in it. I want it to be a little bit more interesting, right? So we're going to go right here to our rectangle tool. You can hit U for the rectangle tool. There we go. And then I'm just going to click and drag in about the same size as the original label. Now, all this stuff can be changed at any time. So if it's not perfect, don't worry about it. Okay, now our fill, in this case, let's go ahead and click on the fill color. I'm gonna just click here on my like color pickle, the color picker. There we go, and you can just choose a color directly from your image with the eyedropper. So let's hit OK. In this case, I'm not gonna give it any stroke. All right, let's go ahead and bring that down, and then this original just white document, we don't need that. Fantastic. So let's go ahead and take a look. This is like a pretty good start. Now these like the flower and the other shape here, I'm going to shift click those and hit Control-Command-T. Let's just make those a little bit larger. And on the Noun project, you can download like high quality versions. So something like that. We're going to put some text in here, but this looks pretty good to start with. I do want the color, so you can see these are just black. I want the color to be like this blue color so it kind of matches. So easy to do. Just click here. I'm just going to type this double click and call this flower. So just double click right there on the layer itself and you'll bring up this layer style. And right here on the left hand side, you can click where it says color overlay. All right. Now with color overlay, you just choose your color. So same deal, just click right there on the color. And then if you hover over your document, you're going to get an eyedropper. So I can just eyedrop any of these colors and you're going to see it's automatically going to fill in. I kind of like that red for now. Let's hit OK there. And that's looking pretty good. And then let's just do the same thing here. So I'm going to double click on this shape here. Let's go to color overlay right here. There we go. And then it's going to bring that up. It's going to automatically bring in the same red. We can leave it there, or you could bring in, like you could click there and bring in a blue color, for instance. But I kind of like this red for now. So let's go ahead and hit OK. Fantastic. Now this is a label design, and keep in mind I want to use this in a few different places. So the first thing I'm going to do is just hit Control-Command-A to select all, and I want everything to be like lined up perfectly, right? Like let's just give you an example, because this is something that happens like a lot with like designs and things like that. Let's just say like everything is kind of like wah, wah, you know, not in the right place. I'll show you how to line everything up because it's really, it's important and it's not that hard. So first thing you want to do is hit Control-Command-A. That's just going to select your whole document. So you can see these little dotted lines here means we're selected the whole document. Okay, let's go ahead and start with this little rectangle here that's going to be like the actual product label itself. So this one, I just want to put in the exact center, both vertically and horizontally, right? So here we go. Let's grab our move tool right over here. And then up at the top of the move tool, we have our alignment tools. So I can click here, boop, and look at that. It just aligns it perfectly on the center. I can click on this other one and it aligns it perfectly to the center horizontally. So all these tools will just align top, center, bottom, or left, center, right. And that's doing it with my active selection. So for instance, if I had a selection like over here, okay, then it would align it centered based on that selection when I hit the center, or centered based on that. So it's because I hit Control-Command-A, it's selecting the entire document, and then I can align it vertically like that, and then click there and align it horizontally also. Pretty nice. Now the flower and this little twig, we can do the same. So Control-Command-A to just select all again, and this flower I can just boop, click and align that vertically. This one I can do that too. Beautiful. And then I just want to move this flower straight down. So let's deselect by hitting Control-Command-D. And then if I just click and drag it down, you can see I drag it anywhere. But if I hold Shift, then it's really easy to just go straight up and down. So just Shift, click and drag that right up and down. And that's looking pretty good. Fantastic. So let's go ahead and add some text. I'm going to hit T for our type tool. Okay. And then I would just going to type in something like clay mask. Okay, it's like a face care product, right? So let's make this a little bit larger. We're going to go to window, and then down here where it says character, let's just keep this character window open here. There we go. And with our character, let's just make it a little bit larger. Fantastic. So this is our clay mask. I'm just using Myriad Pro as my text right now. Let's see what we have here. Let's make it black. It's just going to make it a little bit thicker. And then my color, we're going to click here, and I can actually have that match that red. Now, again, I want to have this centered. So Control-Command-A to select all, hit your move tool, and then boop, click on that center. All right, and let's just hit Control-Command-J to duplicate that. And we're just going to call this rose, hips, and eucalyptus. I don't know if I spelled eucalyptus right there, but we're just making... If I didn't spell eucalyptus right, I'm so embarrassed. You can let me know in the comments. Let's change the font weight back to regular. I probably should have not said eucalyptus. I probably should have said something that I actually know how to spell. But hey, you know, there's learning for you. All right, let's make that a little bit bigger. And I'm just kind of want to create something that looks interesting. Let's create like a little brand name here. So I'm going to hit Control-Command-J for above the clay mask, and we're just going to call this, and we're just going to call it Lively. There we go. This is going to be our brand. Let's just make that regular. The color, I'm going to take and grab this blue color here that's in our background. Well, maybe just like a slightly more orange. I kind of like this red here. We're designing on the fly. But this is super cool. And basically, we're going to go back and show you, there we go, Lively, clay mask, rose hips, and eucalyptus. This looks pretty good. I just want to do a little bit more text down there. So let's hit Control Command J. This time we will do like a slightly different color. There we go. And this is just going to call, I'm going to make some text that says like with CBD and essential oils. There we go. And let's make this a little bit lower in font weight. So let's just make that like a bold instead and kind of take our size down. And then I'm going to take my letter spacing and we're just going to space the letters further apart so we can make that a little bit smaller but still have it kind of spread out. Okay. Now this is looking pretty good. I want to just add a little bit more, but first I want to kind of work on my spacing here. So we have this lively. Let's go ahead and I have a cool keyboard shortcut. If you use your move tool, you can hold Control or Command and then click on any of your objects, and it will basically select that. So now I've got my lively text selected. I just want to bring this down. Maybe we'll just make this even smaller. There we go. That's just going to be the brand there. So now lively and this flower, I want to group those together. So I've got my lively. Let's go ahead and find our flower. Control or Command click those. I'm going to hit Control or Command G to group those together. And we're just going to double click and we'll just call that logo. Okay. Now that's looking pretty good. I can move that on itself. And don't forget, you can hold Shift and then you can move it just straight up and down. There we go. So lively, and then this clay mask rose hips. So let's find clay mask and rose hips. There we go. Shift click those. Control or Command G to group those. I'll just call that clay mask. Fantastic. And then we have this is our plant there, and then we have with CBD. So what I want to do now is kind of like align everything a little bit better because it just kind of looks like the spacing isn't perfect and it's not very clean. It's not very nice. So let's go ahead and take our logo. I'm going to bring that up to the top. I kind of like to bring my layers. For instance, if it's at the top of my document, I like it to be at the top of the logo stack. Just kind of makes sense to me. Okay, there we go. Clay mask we'll bring up above there. So this, let's go ahead and start bringing that down a little bit, and we'll bring the plant down a little bit to match it rather. Okay, and then this clay mask, rose hips and eucalyptus, I want that to be in the center, like under lively and on top of this. I want it to be like centered. Right now you can see it's too high. So what we're gonna do is use another selection. This is super cool. M for the marquee tool, and then as I'm creating my marquee tool, hold spacebar down and you can move this marquee while you make it, and then just let go of spacebar and then you can still make your selection. There we go. So let's go ahead and put that under the lively text and right up there. So you can see it's kind of touching the top of that and the bottom of that text. Doesn't have to be perfect, but then this clay mask here, we'll just click here on the entire group and then go to the move tool and then align this center. So you're going to see it's going to center it within that selection, and everything just looks like a lot more clean now. Fantastic. Now this entire rectangle background, I'm going to hit Control or Command J on that. Let's hit Control or Command T and let's go ahead and make that a little bit smaller. Okay, and bring this in a little bit. Now let's go ahead to our properties. This time I'm not going to give it any fill, but I do want to give it a stroke, and let's just stroke it with this color, and then I'll make the stroke a little bit bigger. It's just going to make it a little bit more interesting. You know what, this CBD, I don't really think that color makes sense. Let's just keep it. Let's keep it, there we go. Go to our colors. Sometimes when you use your, I'm trying to use my, this color dropper here and it's not working because it's actually like sampling from other layers that are above it. So if I just turn those layers off, there we go. I can then go back here, click here, and then I can sample other colors. You're gonna see, and it's actually like changing in real time. The other thing you can do, and let's just take that again. So if I click on this color, you're going to see, there we go. It's working a little bit better now. Sometimes you just have to turn your layers off and on. It's kind of a weird problem in Photoshop. There we go. But one thing you can do if you want to change how your eyedropper actually works, you can go to the eyedropper tool. So let's click on the tool here itself, and then where it says sample, you can change this to, for instance, all layers. And this will work even if you're in like a color picker or somewhere else. You don't have to be using the eyedropper tool itself. So if you ever run into that issue, I know it's not super common, but it can be annoying. So just go to your eyedropper tool, and then you can change out that samples. And then, for instance, now when I actually go to change my color of my text, it's actually going to, you can see it on the bottom there, it's actually going to change and not show up with a weird color that I don't want. All right, there we go. So not a super common issue, but it does happen. All right, I think that's actually looking pretty good. Let's go ahead. I'm going to make this a little bit smaller there, and we're just going to make it wider with CBD and essential oils. That's not looking too bad. Let's take this logo. I'm just going to bring this down a little bit. Since I brought it down, I'm going to hit M for my marquee tool, and then we're going to reselect this and then put the clay mask here back in the center of that. Fantastic. So now we're actually looking pretty good, right? I'm super happy with this. Let's go ahead and save it out. So obviously we talked about, let's just make that a little smaller. We talked about at the beginning of this episode, I want to composite this into the other image, right? So this is part 2 of this episode. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's go just close all these other layers down, all these other images. We don't need them. Here we have our original image, and that's where we want to do the composite. So you can see we've come a long way. I started off with just creating this shape, but we don't need that anymore. Okay. So basically what I want to do, let's just close our character window for now. I want to take this and composite it into this one, but I want it to keep, like, I want it to look like it wraps around, and I want to be able to edit this image on the right-hand side even after I've composited in there, right? Like, for instance, if I just took like a screenshot of it and then like popped that in there and transformed it and, you know, tried to stick it in there or whatever, what if later, like your client or even you're just working and you want to like, for instance, like change where the logo is, like you want to move the logo up or down? Well, you have to totally redo that composite every time, and that's super annoying for one, and it's not necessary. You don't have to do that because there's actually a better way of doing this. So let's show you how to do it. Okay, so we're going to go back to our image that we want to do the composite, and now what we're going to do is we're going to place a smart object. So let's go ahead and save this label template. This is important. You got to save that out. It's got to be a PSD. So label template.psd. So now what we're going to do is go to this layer here. I'm going to go to File, okay, and we're going to go down to where it says Place Linked. And it's actually going to allow us, let's just click on Label Template, right, like what we just made, hit Place. There we go, and hit Enter. And now it's linking this file with this file. So if I just, let's make this a little bit smaller, go ahead and put it about in this place. So let me just show you how this works real quick because it's super cool. So basically on this label, let's say I make the logo invisible and I hit Control-Command-S to save it, okay? It automatically updates on this other document. Let's make that back visible again, Control-Command-S, you can see it's saving here, okay? And it automatically updates there. So best workflow ever because I can just work on the label here, and if I composite it onto this product, maybe a couple of different like boxes or like a billboard mock-up or an advertisement, all the changes I make here would automatically update on all those documents. Super great workflow. And we're going to need it because I'm probably going to need to make some adjustments here. So let's go to our composite and actually start with the composite because this is super, super cool. So we're going to start by lowering the opacity a little bit. There we go, so I can see what I'm doing. Control-Command-T for transform, and let's just make it a little bit smaller. So I do want to be able to see like this logo here. There we go. That's looking pretty good. What I want is like nice coverage for the product, right? Like all the way up to here and all the way down to here. I want that nice coverage. So I have my background here, what's giving me that coverage that I want. But you can see this label here is looks okay up there, but like down here, it's a little bit too wide. So what I can do is like now that I've actually put that in place, I can actually go into this document, okay? And I can make everything a little bit smaller. So I can take these two rectangles. These are like the backgrounds, right? I can hit Control-Command-T and bring these together, just holding Shift and Alt or Option. And look at that, I can just make that a little bit smaller. Control-Command-S, and look at this, it's going to update there and fix it on that product, which is super cool. That's exactly what I want. So I can work back and forth. Now let's go back here. I'm going to hit F for full screen, and now we want to start like actually compositing it. So it's a little bit lower opacity so I can see what I'm doing. That's great. Now it's time to go ahead and start transforming it. I want it to look like it's wrapping around. So easier than you think. It's Control-Command-T for the transform. And then you're going to click on this little icon up here on the top right. That's the warp icon. Or you can just right click and go down to where it says warp. Okay, either one of those. So let's go to warp. Now I'm just going to kind of like bring this in a little bit. Okay, and it's a product, right? So all these lines shouldn't be perfect. It should look a little bit warped, right? Like that's how it's gonna look a lot more realistic, is if like it actually looks like it's, you know, kind of like maybe pushing in some places, pulling in some other places, and things like that. All right, there we go. Maybe not that so much. There we go. Keep in mind that you can change this at any point in time. Okay, we're not stuck with any of these changes. And I can update my product at any time too. All right, that looks pretty good. So let's hit enter there. Now, how do we make it actually look like it's curving around the corner? Well, we're going to do another warp. And with this warp, we're going to split it vertically. So let's again hit Control or Command T. We're going to right click and go down to where it says warp one more time. Here at the top, just make sure it says custom. If it's set to any of these, it's going to override what you do. So just make sure it says custom. Now we're going to right click and I'm going to go to where it says split warp vertically. This is a newer feature within Photoshop. So if you're using like CS6 or something like that, unfortunately, you're not going to have access to this, but you can still just use traditional warps or even liquify in that case. But split warp vertically, horizontally is super nice. So if I do this, split warp vertically, I get this like little line that pops up and I'm going to put it right about there. Okay. Now I can actually like start taking these pixels and pushing them around there, but it's not going to affect anything that's to the left of that line. So basically what I'm doing is making it look like it's kind of like curving around. There we go. Look at that. How cool is that? I'm making it look like it's curving around that actual package. Let's do the same thing on the other side. Right click here, go to split. Whoops, what did I do? right click, go to split warp vertically again. There we go. And we're going to click right about there and then just literally click and drag. And you can see it's kind of like squishes. There we go. Fantastic. Look at this. It's like squishing the actual texture to look like it's wrapping around the edge. Super, super cool technique. And it really makes a big, big difference. All right, let's hit enter there. Now you can see, yes, it does look like it's kind of compressed around the edge. Fantastic. But it's still just visible everywhere. So let's make that invisible for now. We're going to click on our background. We're going to go to select and then down to select subject. Boom. Turn that into a selection, looking good. Here on our label template, let's just click here on our layer mask icon. That's just going to make it only visible in this area. Okay, already we're off to a great start. So next thing we're going to do is just go to the layer mask itself, right? Because right now it's visible everywhere, but we only want it visible on the actual like body of this package. We don't want it visible on the top, you know, like the screw top. So I just need to make a quick selection on this. You can hit P for the pen tool and just like click and drag a couple times. There we go. Just kind of like need to make this curve, and the pen tool is really great for making curves. There we go. Something like that looks pretty good. You can also use a lasso tool or any other tool that you're familiar with to get the job done. There we go. So let's just go ahead around there. I'm going to right click, go down to make a selection. There we go. And then here on the layer mask, I'm just going to fill this with black. So let's hit Shift Delete, and we're going to fill this with black on that layer mask. It's just going to make sure it doesn't show up there, right? So it's only visible on the actual body of this object, not visible on the label. Okay. And up here at the top, I'm just going to use a brush tool. So I'm going to hit B for the brush tool, and then we're just going to paint black. There we go. At 100%. And you can actually, this is kind of cool. I'm going to use just like my trackpad here. I'm going to click over here on the left, and then I'm going to hold Shift and go all the way to the right and click again, and it just makes a nice straight line. Okay, so again, click, hold Shift, click again. Click, hold Shift, click again. There we go. So I can make like nice straight lines just with the brush tool. Super easy to do. There we go. Now on this layer mask here, I don't want it to be so perfect right there, down there at the bottom. It's like too much. So I'm going to click here on the actual layer mask itself, and I'm going to go to my smudge tool, okay? And now with my smudge tool, I'm just going to make a really nice large brush, and I'm going to smudge it a little bit, okay? You can kind of move that around a little bit. It's going to make it a little bit softer because the edge was a little too hard, and you can kind of change your shape a little bit too. All right, so nice and small movements here are going to make a big, big difference in the final. Fantastic. So that's looking pretty good. Now, I want to reiterate here. Let's go ahead and save this out. There we go. Control or Command S. We're just going to call this, there we go, package design. There we go. Let's go ahead and bring all the opacity back up to 100 there. All right. So the cool thing now that we just want to like bring to attention again is I put that in there, we transformed it, we warped it. I'm gonna warp this a little more in just a second, but I can still go in here like on this original one, make that invisible and hit save, and then it's gonna update directly here, okay? So if I want to here, like Controller Command T, here we go, on my actual package, there we go. It's just not gonna allow me to see the layer mask with the smart object, but that's okay. Controller Command T, I can still like bring it up here a little bit. I can right click and go to warp. I'm gonna like take my warp and go to arch. We're just gonna arch it up a little bit. There we go, not so much. There we go, just a little bit, and hit enter. I'm gonna redo my warp and we're gonna redo the split warp here. There we go, to kind of like bring it back in there. So I can make these changes at any time. Split warp vertically again, whoop, there we go, split warp vertically, boom. Like if you weren't happy with how it looked in the composite, like in the original Go, you can just come in here and do it again and make these subtle small changes. There we go, and hit enter. And I can go back on this original one, make that visible, hit Controller Command S to save it. And it's gonna automatically update here on that, the composite. So I'm really like, I'm just in a really good place where I can kind of change this stuff at any time. Controller Command T, let's go back to warp. I even have, because it's a smart object, I even have the ability to come back in here and change my warp at any time as well. So I can kind of come in here and make it, just make it a little bit more believable. Controller Command H will allow you to hide, so you don't see any of the like little borders, but you can still kind of see what you're doing, right? There we go. Let's just kind of like click and drag in here a little bit. I want it to look good, but not like perfect, because if it looks perfect, it's not going to look real, right? So we want it to look like it's actually warping around that package there. There we go. And hit enter, and there we go. That's looking a little bit better. Or if you want to, you can hit Controller Command T. You can go to your warp, and then you can just change it from where it says custom. You can just go to one of these and it's going to completely redo your warp, which is kind of nice. Okay, you can change the way that it warps. There we go. Let's bring it up there a little bit, and then I'm just going to drag my corners in a little bit more because I thought it was looking okay, but I was like, you know what, we can do a little bit better of a job than that. So this is, there we go. Like just the ability to kind of come in here and change this at any time is so nice. All right, right click, go to warp, go to split warp vertically. Let's just do it right out here and push it in a little bit more. There we go. Hit enter, and I think that's looking pretty dang good. So we're super, there we go. Let's pull that down a little bit. Fantastic. I think this is looking great. It's warped into place. We've got a lot of different warp controls. I can still move this around like with the layer mask in place, and the composite is looking fantastic, and I have the ability to change it at any time. So what we need to do now is take the shadows and the highlights from the actual package and place it over top of the label. Because right now it just looks like super flat. It doesn't look realistic. It just like, yeah, you got it in there, but it's like it could use a little work. So how do we do that? Well, basically easy, super easy. Let's just make it invisible for now. You can see there already are shadows on this tube, right? So what I'm gonna do is just duplicate the background layer, double click, I'll just call this shadow, fantastic, and put it above the label, okay? Now, we can lower the opacity so you can see the shadows just above there. If you want your light areas to be invisible and only your shadows or your dark areas to be visible, to appear, you can just change your blend mode, especially because we have a white image here. I'm gonna change my blend mode from normal down to multiply, okay? Let's go ahead and bring that up. So now the shadows from the original photo are multiplying over top of the actual logo package design that I did. Right now you can see it's visible everywhere, which is not so great, right? So what we need to do is just right click on this layer, and I'm going to go to where it says create a clipping mask, okay? Boom. That's going to make it only visible where our packaging design is visible. So like literally, check this out. Original image, we have our composite over top of it, and then the shadows from the actual original photo are just popping over top of my logo, and it's going to make it look a lot more realistic. We can do the same thing with our highlights. So let's just hit Control-Command-J to duplicate that. We're going to change this from normal down to screen instead. Okay, we're going to right click and I'm going to say create a clipping mask, right? So we only want it to be visible there again. Now with this screen, yes, it looks good, but it's a little too visible, right? So I could lower my opacity, but that's just going to lower it everywhere. What I really want to do is I want to make my darks a little bit darker because that's going to make them less visible because I'm in a screen blend mode. So to do that, I can just use like a levels or a curves adjustment layer and make my darks darker. So let's click on we'll just call this highlight. There we go. And then hit Control or Command L for your levels. Okay, and I want to make my darks darker. So as I do this, you're going to see it's making my darks less visible. It's making my highlights still visible. But now, there we go. Check that out. I have the highlights from the original image are now on there. Okay, now I can lower the opacity of that one. Looks pretty good in general. I want to duplicate that. There we go. And I'm going to hit Control or Command L for levels again to make my darks even darker. I just want like a real bright highlight there on the left-hand side, right? Like I want to really, there we go. Well define that highlight. Perfect, just like that. And then you can just kind of go in here and change the opacity of both of these, right? So I just like have one layer of highlight and then another layer that's like a little bit stronger of highlight right on the edge. And that makes a big difference. So this is our original composite. That's the after. I'm also just gonna like hit Control or Command U for hue saturation and just bring the saturation down a little bit because it was a little bit too saturated in the original one. It didn't quite look realistic, okay? But that doesn't actually like affect that. I'll just bring the saturation up just a little bit. I can kind of work on the hue a little bit if I want to too. This is cool because it doesn't affect the original image at all. Don't forget you guys can download this. So like you can kind of see really what we're doing. But that doesn't affect like this at all. Like this label here, like if I want to go in here and I want to just change something, like let's say this clay mask with rose hips, right? Let's just zoom into both of these, right? If I want to just move this down a little bit, I want to try like, what does that look like here with the plant like above it? There we go. Put that clay mask right. I'm having trouble moving things. I'm trying to work too fast. My brain can't keep up with my hands, or vice versa. There we go. Clay mask with rose hips. Let's go ahead and move those both in. If I want to change this around, look at this. Control or Command S to save, and it's automatically going to update on this other document, like with all of this stuff already on it, like with the transforms on there, with the shadows and highlights, like literally everything. I actually kind of like that. So let's keep that up there. Let's move it up. Let's go ahead and hit save. So I can save this and like have it see on my actual document. My logo, I don't even think we need that Lively brand name on there. I just don't think it's actually helping us a little bit. So let's go ahead and move that up a little bit, save this. And now like this is kind of cool because it's a very like iterative design process. Like I can change it on here and then have it automatically update on there. And then, you know, we can kind of see what we're doing. So I'm moving these elements around. They're going to automatically move up there. And then like, boom, our composite looks great. So obviously there's more we can do with the composite. I'm just going to take a new layer here, B for the brush tool. Let's just grab like this yellow color. I'm going to paint over there. We'll just change this from normal down to soft light. That's going to give a little bit of this color, especially on the highlights over on the left-hand side, because I thought these highlights, they look good, but they're like pure white because the original package is pure white. So I'm just adding like a little bit of soft light coloring onto that product there. And then if we want to, we can actually give it a blur because you can see it's like the definition of this is like perfect, crisp definition, but then the background is not so perfect. So I can click on this layer, and because it's a smart object, I can go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, just give it like a super subtle blur, right? So it more matches the composite. And we're gonna go to Filter, down here to Noise, and go to Add Noise, and just do like a tiny bit of noise, and that's gonna help it match this image too. There you can see like the definition of the composite much better matches like the definition of the original photo, right? Much, much better. Let's even go to the layer mask itself. We're going to just go to give this a tiny bit of blur on the layer mask. There we go. So now it's just even better matches. And the coolest thing, because this is all with a smart object, you can see like it's a smart linked object. Look at this, all these smart filters where I added the noise, Gaussian blur, hue saturation, I can just turn that off, right? So now it's perfectly crisp. I can turn that back on and we have the blur and the color and the noise back on there. So it's a total like non-destructive workflow that works incredibly well. And again, keep in mind, I can do this on like a number of documents. So I can have this exact same logo, like label, things like that. I can have that visible across a slew of different products. Like even this background, if I want to like Controller Command T and like make the background a little bit bigger, check that. Hit Enter, Controller Command S to save that, and boom, you can see it automatically updates on that product. So just a fantastic workflow. I love this sort of thing. And that's pretty much everything I wanted to teach you. Don't forget, you guys can download these PSDs so you can kind of follow along. You can go in here as long as you go to like File and then like Place Linked and then linked to this label template. You're totally good to go. You can play around with this. It'll automatically update on that one. Let me know what you guys think. I love this sort of workflow. I know today was a little bit like longer and more complex, but I want to test these out. I want to see if you guys enjoy these like long, complex tutorials. I've done a lot of simple stuff that I think is great, but I think this longer stuff has its place too. So please let me know in a comment. It really helps. I'd really love to know what you think. I'm not just saying that, like I want to know. Do you like this longer format videos? Do you want to see more complex edits like this? Send me a comment right down below. And if you feel like supporting this channel totally for free, just click on that like button because it actually super helps with the YouTube algorithm. And if you want to get free tutorials from YouTube, from our channel, PHLEARN, hit that subscribe button as well. Thank you so much. I'll PHLEARN you later. Bye, everyone.